Hello there, my name is Tumitladi and welcome to my world of programming. Right, we're going to talk about versioning your web API, right? This is going to be part one. I intend to do part two, right? So stay tuned. Before we continue, I just want to tell you quickly about this YouTube channel that I own. It's my previous system that I built and I showed you certain things. Then I want to show you that all these videos are also uploaded on License Henny Tips YouTube channel, right? So if you don't want to be distracted, please watch them from YouTube channel, right? Because I'm not censored yet like a social media platforms, right? We're going to be talking about versioning. So I've been wanting to talk about versioning, and then there's a guy called Nick that I'd like to give one of a hell of a credit because he taught me a versioning API. It didn't make sense, but now I know what it does, right? So let me give you a little bit of other systems that are using versioning in their systems. We're going to start with Microsoft. So Microsoft has this beautiful system called App Center. I'm still going to make videos of how my mobile apps, both Android app and iOS, it's using App Center. But what I want to show you is, you remember this? We spoke about Swagger. This is the UI for Swagger. This is what you use to browse and then understand and interact with your web API. But the one thing I want to show you is this is a public one, by the way. Microsoft allows me to show this. It's fine. That they're using version 0.1, meaning that there was version 0.0. Oh, there's going to be version 0.1.2. That's number one. Facebook has its own. You see, this is a graph API for developers, right? So this way you interact with their APIs, graph API specifically. So I pulled the version 3.3 randomly, and I want to show you it was released back in 2019. We can go as far as version 2.1, and this was released in 2014, right? Available until 2016. So you get the point what versioning is all about, right? Meaning that after it was released on August until October, and then maybe they realized we can improve on this, then they came with the version 2.2, right? Which is they released here until there. But I just want you to be aware, currently they are running with version 18.0, which is released recently, a couple of days ago, right? And then we have YouTube. YouTube has its own data API, which is version 3, right? So what is the point? And let me show you an example with my system, License Henny Tips, right? Firstly, I want to show you how you go about the versioning, right? Number one, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to make a video specifically about AutoMapper, so stay tuned for that. But if you open this folder, there's a V1, V2. I already made the videos talking about contracts, response, and request. But if you open this folder, there's also version 1, version 2. Controllers, there's a V1 version 2, right? What else? Services, there's a V1, V2, right? What else has? I think that's all, right? Let me see, validations, do they? Oh, validations do also have a V1. You see, why is it that validations only has a V1, but the rest of the folders like services has a V1, V2? It's because when you build something, let me make an example with, let's go to contracts, V1, and I want to show with, is it a request or response? Let's use a request. General, we're gonna use not general. I want you to pay attention to what I'm doing. No, but it's not there. Okay, we're gonna use responses because I want this one specifically from startup. So I have this class. You see this class, it has only 3 properties, right? So this is version 1 of the response for version updates. So let's go take a look at version 2. And do you see that version 2 doesn't have a request? I'm sure this makes sense already because like I said, I'm going to continue to do part 2, but I want you not to miss this, right? So I'm only focusing on responses. but I'm jumping ahead of myself to show you that the version 2 folder does not have any request, because I don't need to tamper with requests from version 1 all the way to version 2, but I did need to tamper with the responses from version 1, which is this class, all the way now to version 2. So version 2, I have a startup, and then I have this guy, and this one's a version 2. So let me show you the difference. Let me move these guys side by side. So what do you see here? What's different here? Number one, the name of the class ends with V1, and it's under folder V1. And then this one ends with the V2, it's under folder V2, right? So there's a namespace. But what's different than this class to this class, right? It's because I decided to add additional property in version 2, right? Which is what is a public, because that's the only thing that's missing. So the idea is this: if my clients in this case are the mobile app users, both Android and iOS, if they were interacting with the V1 and they haven't updated or upgraded the mobile app from whatever version, right? What's going to happen is simply this, is that it's fine. I want them to interact with the system using the V1. Should they update the app from the Google Play Store or App Store, then they will interact with the new API that will have, is it public? Does it make sense? I hope it makes sense. Another thing is that, okay, we're done with the contract. Then let's look at the auto mapper. So when you do that, normally I like to tamper with the contract first, then I come to auto mapper, right? So let's start with the V1 startup. There we go. So this is it, and I'll show you why it's so important. Okay, so this side, let's do V2. There we go. So again, what's different? V1 and V2. So what does this mean? It means that you're going to map this guy, which is the actual class for a database table, which is a version update. You're going to interact with the response. Whatever you get there, you're going to output it in this class using this class, right? And also, let me jump ahead of myself. Let me do this. Do you see that the actual class that represents the actual table in a database, which is a version update, has all these properties which are columns? But the only thing I want out of this is three things, which is version, release notes, and create all for V1, right? So that's what I'm doing with AutoMapper, to say you're gonna map it that, but I want you to only give me three things. But when it comes to version 2, there's the same class, by the way, the same class, which is the same table, but I want this to interact with what are V2. So this is V2 to say, out of that, I want you to add, is it public? Do you understand? Cool. So another thing, so we are done with AutoMapper, close that. Controllers. So we have startup. Okay, let me move this one on this side. Okay, so this one is for V1, right? So again, it interacts with what? You see the response? The response points to V1. The V2 of this controller, let me quickly go to V2. There we go. Startup. There we go. So this one is a V2 controller, right? It interacts with the response of what? V2. Now finally, I want to show you the services. Okay, I want to pick up where I left off. I'm going to do part 2, and then I'm going to run it to show you how it looks like from this project here, right? Now stay tuned for part 2. If you want me to teach you these slowly, it can only cost you, it's going to cost you 25 Rand per session for a full hour from Monday till Friday, from 8 p.m. until 9 p.m. I can teach you all of this. Like I said, This is a powerful thing that you could ever learn when it comes to web API. Some people call it the backend, some people call it RESTful service. Until next time.